This
One,
meeting
two,
is
three.
being
Welcome
recorded.
everybody today to Mom and Dad Talks, where our favorite two people are Mom and Dad, and we have a special guest for you. June Colson, Nashville's 2020 Clean Comedy Champion, right here on Mom and Dad Talk. Y'all get excited. How you doing, June?
Man, I'm doing so good. I'm thrilled to death to be here. Your mama just got in the room. She's gorgeous. I told y'all she'd be well worth the wait. She's maybe worried about the cooking and everything else going on. We got this, don't we, Mom? We can do it all. We can do it all.
Have it under control.
Well, June, we're glad to have you on our show. I mean, and you have a wonderful life, right? And first of all, can you tell us, let's start off a little bit with your Mama Mo and Daddy Hot Dog. Start off with your life. Just start a little bit how you grew up here, and then we're going to talk about how you got into comedy, and then we may touch on how you have a speech called Creative Success. We'll see how it works out. Okay, so let's just start up. You growing up and how you got into clean comedy. Can you go there?
Well, I think that you saying that I have a dad named Hot Dog is pretty self-explanatory how I got into comedy. So yeah, I grew up with a mama named Mo and a daddy named Hot Dog. I got a little brother Dewey and a sister Bobby Joe. And thanks to 23andMe, we picked up a new sister a couple of years ago named Leslie, and she's absolutely fantastic. But really, my dad's name is Hot Dog, so not a lot of people were really shocked that there was a little somebody out there. But she's been an amazing blessing. And yeah, I grew up in low-income housing and government housing. My dad had a lot of financial difficulties when I was a kid. I lived a couple doors down from drug dealers, a gentleman's club, taverns. Like, I was never really in a super safe environment as a kid. And I used comedy as a weapon growing up. So it was my way to defend myself. I say, a lot of comics will be like, oh, well, I used to not be clean and then I became a clean comic. I've always been a clean comedian because when God called me to do this, he called me after he, had my heart and after he had control of my tongue, right? But back in the day, it was a defense mechanism. And so, my daddy, drove an El Camino. He's caught himself on fire 3-4 times, flipped a van. He officiated a wedding between Catwoman and Batman on Halloween one year. No, he's not a preacher. Totally not legal. I think the marriage lasted 2 weeks, So when people are like, how did you get into comedy? At first, when God called me into it, it literally was a moment in church where the Lord said, you use this as a weapon and I want you to use it as a tool for me.
Wow.
And so, yeah. And so I was like, God, me? Really? Me? And then the more I thought about my life and the fact that I've always been a chatty Cathy, I've always gotten in trouble for talking too much. And I have a dad named Hot Dog. And yeah, it kind of makes sense, right? Yeah. It's my skill set. It's my skill set. So yeah, that's kind of how the journey began.
Wow. I mean, it's such a, you grew up in some people would call it an adverse life, but you turned it around and made it positive and enriching life. And you turned that thing around. It's amazing how you flip that around. And I know that you have the talk on creative success, but before we get into that part, so you got into clean comedy. How in the world did you get to be Nashville's 2020 Clean Comedy Champion? I'm just curious. How did that even come about? How did you throw yourself in the hat with that? Because you've been doing comedy for a while. But tell us that story.
I was pretty new into the comedy scene, right? As far as like writing and performing. And I honestly, it's God. God knew that I would use that the platform or whatever to give testimony to him, because any success that I have, I am a scatterbrained, just mess of a human being. So if it all comes together, it's because God pieced it together, right? Nice. So 2020, it was one of the last things that they did as far as comedy in Nashville. Everything was really shutting down and all of that. And we didn't know to the last minute whether the competition was going to go on or not. And it was such a bizarre situation because you could only have 20 people in the room. Everybody had a mask on. They were all spread out. It's horrible for comedy. The whole situation is set up, but they did the best they could to make it happen. And so I was up against a lot of veteran comedians, 10, 15 years into this. I'd only been doing it for a few years. And they were so, I feel like, rattled by the environment and like the lack of being able to hear laughs and all that. And I was like, yo, that's kind of my thing. Like, I don't even, people half the time they don't laugh at me. And then they were like, oh, it's been so many weeks since I had a gig. And I'm like, yep, that's my schedule, you know? So I honestly think I just won because I love people and I love connecting with people. I'm not a super competitive person. And so I just went in going, man, I just want to have a good time. I just want to have fun. I want to get better at what God called me to do. I want to make connections and friendship with people. And I think just being able to lay back, have fun with it, and not take myself too seriously is what gave me the opportunity to, you know, to end up winning the championship. And then I had good mentors. There's a comedian named Bone Hampton, and he had judged it a few years before, and I'd spent some time with Bone a couple weeks prior to the competition, and he just gave me good solid advice. You know, one of the things he told me is hot dog, hot dog, hot dog. He said, even if you don't win, let the people remember who you are and what makes you unique. So he was like, you know, promise me that you'll do at least one set talking about your daddy. And so I did. And so, yeah, God just put people in place that help me relax, go have a good time. And then, you know, he's the one really that got me to the point of winning that championship and having that title. So,
wow. I mean, that's an incredible story. And like I said, you know, I mean, you know, this is a 10, 15-minute show here, but I got to bring you back because you have more stuff on you. But, you know, you have this thing. And by the way, you're from Bowling Green, Kentucky, right?
I am. Well, I'm halfway between Nashville and Louisville, Kentucky. So I'm kind of that middle spot right there.
And the reason why it's so important about that Kentucky is because, you know, my grandfather was from Kentucky.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, Millersburg, Kentucky is where he's from. That, my mom's side, my mom's side.
Oh, how cool!
Kentucky is an interesting state. There's a lot of like you know, you have like trees, and then you got nothing between towns. It's just, you know, it's an amazing journey there. I remember going to Millersburg. I'm like, what? It's like one light there at the time. I guess now that Louisville's going up, it's in the next by Louisville. But I remember going there like, what in the world did I walk into? Everything's you know,
it's definitely beautiful. It's definitely, you know, there's some beautiful hills and areas to travel into. But yeah, we actually came here with Corvette. My dad was transferred from one factory in Indiana to the Corvette plant here in Bowling Green. And then he was moved to Atlanta and other places. So it was a time that the factories and stuff were shutting down a lot. And so he stayed laid off more than he got to work. That's what brought us here, Corvette plant.
Hey, you know what? We're from Michigan. So Dad, you know what? Let me let you go ahead, Dad, because my dad's a car guy. And go ahead, Dad.
Yeah. My dream car is a 2023 Corvette. Yes.
Listen, you and my husband. My husband has been,
You know, I've been waiting around to set in one to see how I fit, but you know, here in Niles, Michigan, there's not a whole lot of Corvettes.
No, not a lot. Well, listen, when he gets his, I'll take it and I'll drive to Michigan and I'll come see you. We'll cruise around in the Corvette a little bit.
Here in Niles, we're truck people, you know, 4-wheel drive, you know.
Oh yeah.
We're truck guys.
So
yeah, those bets don't go too well on the snow.
No.
And so you hit my dad.
How did your father get his name Hot Dog?
You know, there's a lot of different, like before he was Hot Dog, he was Pudgy. And before he was Pudgy, we called him Fast Eddie. I tell people, I ask him why he had so many nicknames, and he said, they're not nicknames, baby. These are aliases. So there's that. But really, I think the hot dog was because he was just always wild and wide open. And then also pool players, like people who are really good at the pool, you know, playing pool or whatever. Hot dog is a nickname for them. And he was he was a bit of a pool shark back in the day. So everybody knew him for his skill at the pool table as well.
And I love playing pool, so that is my game. So I know exactly what you're talking about there. You know, he would take your money, be like, oh, he can't play. And all of a sudden you get whooped out and you lose money because you're trying to beat him again and you can't because he's that good. You know, June, you know, we talked a little bit before the show about you have this speech. If you want her to be a motivational speaker, she has this thing called Creative Success. June, just tell our audience a little bit about it, because you said something about McDonald's and how you remember. Talk a little bit about that. I don't want to upset everything. Let me shut up.
Okay, yeah. So basically, as I was looking at my life and how I've journeyed through things, is God gave me a creative mind. So when I saw, what looked like a stop sign to a lot of people who were in the neighborhoods that I was from, I just saw it as an obstacle. And so I would look for different ways, over it, around it, under it, through it, like what do we have to do? And so some of my comedy is about how I never had a winter coat or a good pair of shoes. And I found out if you joined the cheerleading squad, they would give you both.
Wow.
And so I was met with some resistance from the cool girls because I was from the wrong side of the tracks. And they basically told me I'd never make it on the team. But back then, if you could do a back handspring, they would let you on the squad. And I didn't want to be with them. I just knew if I made the team, they would give me a jacket and a pair of shoes.
Yeah.
And so I had a friend in the trailer park named Missy who had a baby mattress, and she spotted me. And I got my back handspring. And so I realized that every time, no one in my family had ever gone to college. Yeah. And so I was interested in working in radio. So I basically went to a radio station, talked to a couple of DJs and said, what would you charge me to teach me to do what you're doing? Because I can't afford to go to college. So I had mentors that helped me do that. I did a pageant one time because of scholarship money, and I walked. We didn't have cars that ran most of the time. And so I walked, and I found somebody on the bypass who was willing to sponsor me. Then I won. I'm June, and they gave me Miss November, y'all. I don't know. But I had to have professional pictures taken. Yeah. And so I found a friend of mine's hairdresser was also a photographer, and it was the fall and there were leaves everywhere and their yard looked awful. So I talked them into letting me rake the leaves if they would take one picture of me. I needed one headshot to go into the calendar for Calendar Girl. And so that's what I talk about. I talk about how a lot of times, you'll hear people creating excuse after excuse after excuse. And I realized my journey, the McDonald's is that 1989, someone would come to the counter, sing the whole menu. Yeah. And if you memorize that and did it at McDonald's, they give you a free cheeseburger. So I literally still know the entire menu, and I can do it in under 40 seconds. Of the menu. And I still get free cheeseburgers sometimes. So.
Wow, that is totally amazing. It's such an amazing story. And like I said, folks, this is not serving June. I mean, she has an amazing life. I mean, when I was going through what you had there, I was just so amazed at all the obstacles you just overcame. I mean, and you persevered, and coming from a different side of town, I understand that, where people don't accept you for who you are, but you say, I'm not going to make that excuse. I'm going to make this my platform and make it my stepping stone instead of my stumbling block. And I just love just how you just overcome obstacles and just took it on. I mean, you were in a comic with Seasoned Comics. Think about that, folks. Seasoned Comics, and you're like, I'm just going to go and give my best, and you won.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I mean, it's just amazing. And you're like, look, I'm just doing the game, but I'm going to give it a try, and I'm going to learn. And you study, and folks, you got to take my sister June, bring her to your church, bring her to she can fit in any situation you have here. And before I turn it over to my mom and dad, because we're hitting in a minute here to ask their question. You're a clean comic, but you can be in any atmosphere. That's what I like about you, June. Yeah. You can be all things to all people. Tell a little bit about that, and I'll have my mom and dad ask a question before we get go.
Yeah, I tell people I'm a Christian comedian. There's like a thing in that where people are like, do you say you're a Christian comedian? Are you a comedian who's a Christian? I call myself what God called me out the gate. He called me a Christian comedian. However, I don't do church material because I didn't grow up in the church culture. So there's a lot of comics who do an amazing job at that. But I literally just talk about, where I came from, what I've been through, and where I am now. And find the funny in it, and you never have to worry about me going sideways or the Lord controls my comedy. Yes. Right? I give it to Him and run it through Him before I bring it to stage. But yeah, I have a great time. I love everybody. I love going anywhere people want to laugh, and so yeah.
And everybody likes to laugh. So mom and dad, this is that time where I turn it over to you. You have any questions for June before we wrap it up?
Well, my only question is, how your father got his name Hot Dog, and I understand that now. But I don't know. My wife, do you have any questions about June?
Let's see. The question I have is, how far are you in Tennessee, the state of Tennessee now? How you got connected with Todd?
Yeah. So I'm in Bowling Green, Kentucky, which means I'm about halfway between Louisville and Nashville. Louisville's actually an hour and a half. Nashville's an hour for me.
Okay.
And immediately God connected me with a lot of Nashville comics. And so that's kind of my scene. I drive every time I do comedy, or to write or to support my friends, I drive an hour to an hour and a half to go be with them. And it's worth the drive every time. So yeah, I'm really close to Tennessee, but that's really, people can kind of consider me a Nashville comic.
Is there ever going to be an opportunity that you and Todd will actually meet face to face to connect?
We have an opportunity. It's funny you say that, Mom, because how I met June is through a comedy conference called LOLGCA that June is a part of. And part of the thing is I'm working STC Sustain the Change. See, I'm putting a shameless plug in here, folks, is working with LOLGCA in the future in October, folks. So get your tickets. Now, listen, folks, very carefully. You need to come to this comedy conference. Yes. And it's more than comedy. And when I tell you right here, you meet some famous comedians, clean comedians. You don't have to cringe. See, what I like about clean comedy, you don't have to cringe. You don't have that thing that's like, oh, you can just laugh and have fun because, life is funny in itself. So in October, hopefully we'll all see each other there. I can't wait, June, to meet you in person. But you know what, June? You know what? We're up to the minute here. This is what I want to say. June, Niles, you need to bring June Colson up there to Niles, Michigan, to my city. Yes, you do. I'm telling that right now. You got to find a way to get her there, folks. My little town. Find a way there. And you know what, folks? Be ashamed if you don't have her up there because she is funny. She is a lot of fun and she's clean. So June, in saying that, how would someone get in touch with you if they want you at their place to do clean comedy?
All right. Well, it's pretty simple. It's June Colson. It's COLSON. JuneColsonComedy.com. It's June Colson Comedy on Facebook and June Colson Comedy on Instagram. So you can reach out to me in any of those locations, and I will get back with you for sure.
Okay.
Okay, folks, you have it right there. And Niles, I'm holding you accountable. My little town of Niles. Now, it's not a suburb of Detroit. Don't worry about it, June. It's a country. It kind of reminds you of your hometown of where you kind of reminds you a little bit of Millersburg. I'm sorry, Dan. Mom.
Yeah, we don't lock our doors and leave our keys in our truck. So
there you go. There you go.
But anyway, I'm hoping you come to it's really near South Bend, Indiana. So people in South Bend, Indiana, where Notre Dame is, please bring June out there. She's a clean comic. June, I'm so glad to have you on. We're going to bring you back to talk about other things because you have such an amazing story, amazing life that we really need to get into, folks. But like I said, thank you so much for coming on the show. And once again, thank you for coming on Mom and Dad Talks. Till next time, we'll see you next week. Bye.
bye.
Bye.